What if the son of one of America's most powerful billionaires, armed with every privilege money could buy, was on the verge of losing everything, not to poverty, but to his own emptiness? If stories of redemption, justice, and unexpected family touch your heart, please like and subscribe so you can stay with us until the very last chapter of this journey. The backcountry of Greenwich, Connecticut, was a world unto itself. Vast estates hidden behind iron gates, lawns trimmed like emerald carpets, driveways curling for half a mile before reaching houses that looked more like palaces than homes. Among them stood the Whitaker residence, a mansion of stone and glass where silence pressed heavier than wealth. At 7 sharp on a gray Monday morning, sunlight filtered through the arched windows of the breakfast room, cutting across polished silverware arranged with meticulous precision. On the table sat a plate of eggs Benedict, the yolk spilling in a golden stream beneath the knife's edge. It should have been a scene of abundance, the kind of image that adorned glossy lifestyle magazines. Yet across from the untouched plate sat Andrew Whitaker, CEO of Whitaker Technologies, his gaze locked on his son with an expression no meal could soften. 17-year-old Logan Whitaker slouched in his chair, the knot of his tie loose, his prep school blazer discarded carelessly over the backrest. He had inherited his father's sharp cheekbones and the unruly wave of blonde hair, but none of his discipline. Between them lay a folded academic report like a final verdict. F in chemistry, D in English, F again in pre-calculus. Andrew's voice was calm, precise, the same tone he used in boardrooms in Stamford. Your GPA has dropped below 2.0. Do you understand what that means? Logan pushed his fork half-heartedly through the sauce. That I'm not Harvard material? Don't worry, Dad. I figured that out already. Andrew's jaw tightened. It means you are now on academic probation. Your guidance counselor has filed truancy notes, and every financial column from the Journal to the Times would take pleasure in reporting that the heir to Whitaker Technologies is failing out of Northwood Preparatory. The words landed with more weight than the marble floor beneath them. To Andrew, this wasn't only about grades. It was about reputation, about the family name that underpinned shareholder confidence. For Logan, it was just another reminder that in his father's eyes, he was less a son than a headline waiting to collapse. He leaned back, folding his arms with practiced indifference. Let them write whatever they want. Maybe it'll trend. The silence that followed was colder than the waters of the Long Island Sound in February. Finally, Andrew slid his phone across the table, the gesture sharp as a gavel. You've lost this. Logan frowned. What? Your phone, and with it, your keys, credit card. All privileges. Effective immediately. Andrew's voice did not rise. It didn't need to. From tomorrow, you will take the school bus. 6:45. North Street stop. Logan blinked, stunned. The boy whose weekends had been filled with Tesla joyrides and country club brunches was now sentenced to the humiliation of the yellow bus. You can't be serious, he scoffed, though his voice cracked under the weight of disbelief. Andrew rose from the table, adjusting the cuffs of his navy suit. Do not mistake my silence for hesitation. You will ride that bus. You will arrive on time, or you will not remain in this house. The finality in his tone left no room for rebellion. Logan's chest tightened, and for the first time in years, beneath the sarcasm and bravado, he felt something raw, fear. Andrew checked the time on his Patek Philippe, gathered his briefcase, and turned toward the door. I have a board call in Stamford. I expect progress before the semester ends. Logan watched his father's retreating figure, the echo of polished shoes against Italian tile filling the room. He wanted to shout, to flip the plate, to say he didn't care, but the truth, buried deep under his anger, was that he did care, just not in the way his father demanded. When the heavy front door shut, silence returned to the mansion. The eggs cooled on the plate, forgotten. Logan sat motionless, staring at the report card that now seemed to mock him with its ink. His failures weren't just his own anymore. They were public property. Later that morning, the Whitaker limousine idled in the circular driveway, engine humming softly, waiting for him as always. But Logan waved the driver off. He slung his backpack over one shoulder and stepped into the crisp Connecticut air. The mansion behind him loomed like a museum of expectations, grand yet lifeless. Mist curled from the grass, carrying the faint scent of oak from nearby Bruce Park. Logan's shoes crunched against the gravel as he walked toward the street. Ahead, the world felt heavier than it ever had. For the first time in his life, the Whitaker name could not shield him. He was about to stand at a bus stop with everyone else, his privilege stripped bare. He wondered if anyone at Northwood Preparatory would look at him and see more than a headline: "The Prince of Whitaker Tech flunks again." He tugged his hoodie tighter around his shoulders, bracing himself against the wind. What he did not yet realize was that the cracks in his privileged armor, the humiliation, the stripping away of comfort, were not endings. They were beginnings, spaces where something unexpected might seep through. Change rarely announces itself with trumpets. Sometimes it comes disguised as a yellow bus and the shame of being seen. The rain came softly from Long Island Sound, a thin veil brushing the glass of the Whitaker mansion. It was the kind of drizzle that blurred the world into shades of gray, softening the sharp edges of stone walls and manicured hedges. Inside, the great library stretched upward like a cathedral, shelves of mahogany climbing toward a coffered ceiling. To visitors, it was a shrine to knowledge. To Logan, it had always felt like another gallery of things he did not belong to. He wandered the rows that afternoon, still burning from the humiliation of the morning bus ride and the smirk that had followed him into every corridor of Northwood Preparatory. His father's words echoed like an indictment. "Your GPA has dropped below 2.0. Do you understand what that means?" Logan shoved his hands deeper into his hoodie pockets, drifting between shelves lined with books he had never opened. Then, from the far alcove near the tall windows, he caught the faintest movement. A small figure crouched by the baseboard, rag in one hand, a book in the other. She was younger than him by half a lifetime, no older than 11. Chestnut brown hair tumbled in loose strands, and her plain gray dress was smudged at the knees where she knelt. A spray bottle and cloth sat on the floor beside her. Yet her gaze was not on the paneling she wiped, but on the battered paperback she balanced across her lap. Logan stopped. "What are you doing?" The girl looked up, calm and unstartled, as if she had already known he was there. Her hazel eyes held no apology. "Cleaning," she said evenly. Then she held up the book. "And reading." He frowned. "At the same time?" "Yes." Her voice was matter-of-fact, not defensive. "It's Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. I borrowed it from the public library in town." Logan stepped closer, incredulous. "That's philosophy, Roman Stoicism. You're 11. "Almost 12, she corrected softly. "Age doesn't decide what you understand. Attention does." Logan let out a short laugh, sharp as broken glass. "Attention training? Is that what you call reading while scrubbing floors?" The girl closed the book carefully, her thumb marking the page. "My name is Maya Carter. My mother, Elena, keeps this house. But the book doesn't belong to us or to you. It belongs to whoever has the focus to open it." The simplicity of her words threw him off balance. Most people in his life recoiled at his sarcasm. She seemed to let it pass through her like water around stone. "So what's the trick then?" Logan asked, leaning against the shelf with exaggerated nonchalance. "You read old dead emperors, and suddenly you know all the answers?" Maya tilted her head slightly. Not answers. Questions that matter. Most people stop at the surface. They see the words but miss the meaning. They see a person but not their story. Her eyes lingered on him when she said it, and for the first time in a long while, Logan felt as though someone was looking past his armor. He folded his arms. Give me an example. Maya turned toward the oil painting hanging above the fireplace, a landscape of rolling hills under a crimson sky. What do you see? A sunset. That's looking. She took a step closer to the painting. But if you pay attention, the light falls differently across the field. The painter meant to draw your eye to the path. Even fading light gives direction. Seeing isn't about the object, it's about the connection. Logan frowned, caught off guard. He had passed that painting 100 times and thought of nothing beyond its price tag. Now, framed by Maya's words, it felt almost alive. Fine, he muttered. So the world has hidden signals. Big deal. Not hidden, she corrected, her voice gentle. Ignored. The rain tapped harder against the windows. Logan shifted, unsure why he hadn't already walked away. Something about her calmness anchored him there. You really think you can teach me something? He asked. Maya picked up her rag, stood and tucked the book under her arm. She was smaller than him by nearly a head, yet her presence carried more gravity than the teachers at Northwood who had long since stopped trying. I don't think, she said. I know. If you change how you look, you'll change what you see. And once you see, you can't go back. Logan opened his mouth, but no words came. The bravado that usually shielded him felt flimsy under the steady weight of her gaze. For years, he had been defined by numbers, test scores, grade point averages, stock valuations tied to his father's name. He had never stopped to consider that there might be another measure, one that could not be calculated or dismissed. The storm outside rattled the windows, filling the silence between them. Finally, Logan muttered, You sound like you believe that. I do. Maya glanced back at the shelves towering above them. That's why I read Marcus Aurelius while cleaning baseboards. To remember that clarity isn't given, it's practiced. She turned, gathering her supplies, and walked toward the door with a steadiness that made Logan feel suddenly hollow. He stood frozen, watching her small frame disappear into the hallway. When the room fell silent again, Logan found himself staring at the painting she had pointed to. The path across the crimson field glowed faintly in the dying light, as though the artist himself were whispering through time. Even in fading light, there is direction. For the first time, Logan wondered if the problem wasn't that the world had failed to see him, but that he had never learned how to see it. The mist clung low to North Street the next morning, curling into the beams of early commuters' headlights. Logan stood at the corner with his backpack slung too casually, trying to look invisible, though his presence was anything but. For the first time in his life, the Whitaker heir was waiting for a yellow school bus. The limousine was gone, the Tesla parked cold in the garage. Andrew's decree had been absolute, privileges revoked, bus at 6:45. The sentence echoed in Logan's head like a cruel joke. The growl of the bus carried down the street before it appeared, brakes squealing as it slowed. The doors opened with a hiss. Logan stepped up, the soles of his sneakers sticking to the rubber floor. For a split second, the bus went quiet. Then the whispers began. Is that... No way. That's Whitaker. A phone camera clicked. Another followed. By the time Logan slid into a seat halfway down, the vinyl cracked beneath him. The air buzzed with murmurs and poorly hidden laughter. From the back came the voice he dreaded. Well, look who joined the people's commute, drawled Connor Hale, son of Whitaker Technologies' CFO. His smirk carried like a spotlight. The Prince of Greenwich, riding the bus with us peasants." The laughter spread, eager, contagious. Logan pressed his shoulder against the window, staring out at the stone walls and iron gates rushing by. He told himself it didn't matter, but the heat creeping up his neck betrayed him. Connor wasn't done. "What happened, Whitaker? Did Daddy cut your allowance? Chauffeur quit? Or did you finally flunk too many classes?" Phones angled toward him again. Logan clenched his fists under the seat, forcing himself not to react. A single outburst and the scene would live online forever. By the time the bus rolled into Northwood Preparatory's driveway, the damage was done. Within minutes, Instagram stories buzzed with a grainy shot of Logan stepping off the bus. Blazer wrinkled, expression caught mid-scowl. The caption beneath it read, "Prince on a bus." The meme spread before lunch. Screens lit up in every hallway, students smirking as they scrolled. Connor's post gathered likes by the 100, each one a small nail in Logan's already battered pride. By third period, Logan was called into the guidance counselor's office. Mrs. Albright sat behind her desk, framed by pennants from Yale, Dartmouth, and Princeton. Her voice was firm, but not unkind. "Logan, your academic probation is serious," she said, tapping his file. "Northwood requires 24 credits to graduate. Right now, you're short. Truancy notes only make it worse." Logan slouched in the chair, trying for indifference. "Maybe college isn't for everyone." Mrs. Albright leaned forward. "College may not be, but doors close faster than you think. Even with SAT Act optional policies, transcripts matter. If you don't change course, you won't have options left." Her words pierced deeper than he wanted to admit. Logan left with the truancy slip still warm in his hand, its black ink shouting louder than the whispers outside. At lunch, the meme followed him into the cafeteria. A table erupted in laughter as someone held up their phone. Logan caught his own scowling face paired with a cartoon crown. The sting was sharper than he let show. He slid into a corner seat alone, tray untouched. Across the room, Connor basked in the attention, high-fiving his circle of friends. By the final bell, Logan felt hollowed out. The ride home loomed like a gauntlet. When the bus hissed to a stop by the curb, he hesitated, staring at the cracked yellow paint as if it were a stage he didn't want to enter. "Don't miss your ride, Whitaker," Connor called across the lot, his voice loud enough to carry. "Public transit doesn't wait for royalty." The laughter followed, rolling like thunder. Logan climbed aboard without a word, head low, heart pounding. As the bus pulled away, his reflection wavered in the window, warped by streaks of rain. For the first time, he wondered if Maya had been right. Most people look but don't see. Perhaps no one here saw him at all, only the caricature of a fallen heir. Yet the thought refused to leave. If meaning was hidden in patterns, as Maya insisted, then maybe even humiliation had a lesson. He didn't know what it was yet, but the certainty that there was something more than shame kept him from sinking entirely. The bus rumbled down the Merritt Parkway toward Greenwich, carrying Logan not only home, but deeper into the collapse of his old life. Somewhere beyond the noise of mocking voices, a path was waiting. He just couldn't see it yet. The September air was damp with the memory of last night's storm. Water clung to the blades of grass in the Whitakers' back lawn, dew shining like scattered glass beads beneath the canopy of the old oaks. Logan trudged across the yard, restless from another day at Northwood where the meme still stalked him through every hallway. His name had become a joke, a punchline. But near the trunk of an oak older than the mansion itself, he saw her again. Maya Carter, sketchbook open across her knees, pencil scratching with quick precision. She was tracing the geometry of a spiderweb stretched between two branches, droplets of dew glowing in the morning light. You again, Logan said, trying for sarcasm, though it came out tired. Maya didn't look up. And you again, she replied evenly. Then she added, You walk like you're trying not to be heard. I'm not hiding. Yes, you are, she said, eyes still on the web. From the bus, from the laughter, from your father. But hiding doesn't make the noise disappear. Seeing does. Her words stung, though not with cruelty, more like the sting of truth. Logan shifted, scuffing the dirt with his sneaker. So, what? You're my tutor now? Maya closed her sketchbook, stood and faced him. Her tone was calm, but her eyes were steady. If you want me to show you how to see, there are conditions. Logan smirked, masking unease. Rules? I've had rules my whole life. Not rules for control, she corrected. Conditions for freedom. That silenced him. Against his own pride, he found himself listening. Maya raised a small hand, counting on her fingers. First, you reset your assumptions. Forget that you're Andrew Whitaker's son. Forget what money buys. Start from zero. Logan scoffed. Easy for you to say. Everyone already expects nothing from you. Maya's gaze didn't waver. That's why I can see clearly. You carry everyone's judgment like a chain. If you don't drop it, you'll never move. She raised her second finger. Second, you follow instructions without twisting them. No sarcasm, no shortcuts. If I say observe, you observe. If I say listen, you listen. You obey the method completely. The word obey made Logan bristle, but something in her tone, more discipline than command, kept him from arguing. And third? He asked. Maya lifted her final finger. You surrender your pride. Stop pretending not to care. Stop making everything a joke. If you can't be humble, you can't learn. The last condition cut deeper than the others. Pride had been Logan's armor. Thin, cracked, but still a shield. Without it, what was left? He exhaled slowly. Not sure I can do that. Then you'll stay blind. Maya's words were blunt, but not cruel. She reached into her apron pocket and pulled out a folded photograph. It was old, edges curled, the image slightly faded. It showed a young Andrew Whitaker in a dim garage in Stamford, soldering circuit boards with unkempt hair and a second-hand suit. His smile was fierce, hungry, alive. Look, Maya said. Logan stared at the photo. For years he had only seen his father as the polished CEO, all navy suits and clipped diction. But here was a man he barely recognized, tired, determined, almost fragile. What do you see? Maya pressed. Logan hesitated. Someone who worked harder than I ever gave him credit for. Maya tucked the photo away. That's empathy. That's the beginning of seeing. The oak leaves rustled above them, scattering droplets down like shards of glass. Logan felt something shift inside him, subtle but undeniable. Maya pointed at the web between the branches. Lesson 1. Observation. Most people walk past, look closely. The lines carry tension differently. Some strands hold the weight, others just connect. Balance is everything. Logan leaned in. The dew caught the light, each bead suspended in fragile perfection. For the first time, he noticed not just the web, but its design. Lesson 2, Maya said, tilting her head toward the house. Faint sounds drifted from the kitchen, sizzling oil, the scrape of metal on metal. Listen. Can you tell what's cooking? Logan closed his eyes, straining. At first it was noise, but gradually the layers separated. The sharp crackle of onion, the softer whisper of garlic, the rhythmic scrape of a spoon against pan. Signal versus noise, Maya explained. Life is like that. Most people only hear chaos. You can choose to hear patterns. Logan opened his eyes, something stirring in his chest. The mansion didn't feel silent anymore. It felt alive with details he had never noticed. And lesson 3, Maya finished. Empathy. You already practiced it with the photograph. Seeing people as they were before the world put labels on them. Logan swallowed hard. In the space of minutes, his perspective had shifted. The web, the kitchen, the photo of his father, all ordinary, all suddenly luminous. Maya picked up her sketchbook again. Those are the first steps. If you accept the conditions, we continue. If not, you'll go back to failing grades and louder whispers. Logan looked at her, this girl half his age who carried herself with the gravity of a professor. His pride screamed to walk away, but beneath it something stronger urged him forward. I accept, he said quietly. Maya gave a single nod, as if she had expected no less. Then tomorrow we begin again. She turned back to her drawing, pencil moving with the same precision as her words. Logan stood there, uncertain, yet lighter than he had felt in weeks. For the first time, the noise of ridicule from school felt less absolute. Maybe meaning could be found even in humiliation. Maybe clarity wasn't about escaping, but about learning how to see. The ballroom of the Whitaker mansion had long been a hollow monument. Its chandeliers glittered in silence, their crystal drops suspended above a polished oak floor that had not known music or dancing in years. To Logan, it had always felt like wasted space, a room that belonged to strangers who never arrived. But on this late afternoon, the emptiness was different. In the center of the ballroom stood a massive whiteboard on wheels, pulled in by Maya with the determination of someone who belonged everywhere, no matter how large the room. Markers lay scattered at her feet like weapons waiting to be used. You said you wanted to learn how to see, she began, capping a green marker with a snap. Today we'll map it. Logan folded his arms, half skeptical, half intrigued. Map what? I'm failing pre-calc. I can't even map a parabola. Maya smirked, a flash of humor rare for her. Not math, connections. She drew a circle in the middle of the board and labeled it Industrial Revolution. From there, she branched arrows outward. Transcontinental Railroad, Bessemer Steel Process, immigrant labor, folk poetry. The board began to sprawl with lines and circles, a web alive with color. Logan squinted. What does poetry have to do with steel? That's the point, Maya replied. History isn't a list of dates, it's a network. The railroad wasn't just about tracks, it changed immigration, which shaped culture, which inspired songs and stories, which fueled politics. Everything touches everything else. She stepped back, marker poised like a conductor's baton. Your teachers hand you pieces. This shows you the bridges. Logan approached, drawn despite himself. The whiteboard shimmered with lines like the spider web he had studied in the oak tree. So, if I understand one, I can follow to the others? Exactly. Memory isn't cramming, it's walking across bridges. Once you build the map, you can cross it any time. Logan hesitated, then picked up a marker. He circled Bessemer Steel Process and drew a line to urban architecture. Steel meant skyscrapers, right? Maya's eyes brightened. And skyscrapers changed cities, population density, economics, even social behavior. Something flickered inside him. Recognition. Satisfaction. He tried again, linking immigrant labor to labor unions. That led to strikes, then reforms. See? Maya's grin widened. You're building your own bridges. For the next hour, the ballroom filled with the sound of squeaking markers. Logan scribbled links faster than he thought possible, his once scattered knowledge knitting into patterns. History stopped being a burden. It became a puzzle, alive with pathways. When the whiteboard was full, he leaned back, chest heaving with a strange exhilaration. It feels different, like it finally makes sense. That's schema, Maya said. Your brain remembers patterns, not lists. Once you see the structure, facts attach themselves naturally. Logan stared at the sprawling map, realizing he had never been taught to learn this way. All his life, school had felt like memorizing bricks. This was building bridges. The next morning in history class, Mrs. Cooper projected a black and white photograph onto the screen. Workers perched on a steel beam high above Manhattan in the 1930s, the city spread like a toy set below them. Can anyone tell me what this image represents about the Industrial Revolution? She asked. The room went silent. Students glanced at one another, waiting for someone else to risk an answer. In the back, Connor Hale leaned lazily in his chair, smirking as if certain Logan would remain invisible. But Logan raised his hand. Mrs. Cooper blinked. Yes, Mr. Whitaker? His voice steadied as he spoke. It's not just construction. It's the Bessemer steel process, the technology that made skyscrapers possible. That drew immigrants into cities, which fueled cultural shifts. Folk songs, poetry about hardship. Those cultural shifts strengthened labor unions, which pushed for reforms. The classroom froze. Even Mrs. Cooper's eyebrows rose. That's remarkably comprehensive, she said after a beat. Excellent work, Logan. Whispers stirred across the rows, but for once they weren't mocking. A few students looked at him differently, curious, surprised. Connor's smirk faltered, the smallest crack in his armor. Logan sat straighter, warmth spreading in his chest. It wasn't pride built on sarcasm or defiance. It was pride earned. That evening, he found Maya back in the ballroom, erasing the colorful sprawl from the whiteboard. The markers squeaked as bridges vanished under her strokes. You saw it, didn't you? She asked without turning. Logan nodded. For the first time, it felt like I was ahead of the class, not behind. Maya glanced over her shoulder. That's because you weren't reciting facts. You were showing connections. People remember connections. They change us. He studied her, realizing how strange this was. A billionaire's son learning from a housekeeper's daughter in a ballroom that had never known joy. Yet it felt more real than anything Northwood had given him. I want more, he said quietly. Maya smiled faintly, erasing the final circle. Then tomorrow, we'll build bigger bridges. The chandelier lights scattered across the polished floor, refracting like stars. For once, the ballroom wasn't empty. It was alive, with webs, with bridges, with the first fragile steps of change. The Whitaker mansion had 2 kitchens. One gleamed with polished marble, copper pans, and Michelin-trained chefs. The other, hidden near the service hallway, was smaller, humbler, filled with the smell of garlic and thyme from meals prepared for staff. It was in the latter, near midnight, that Logan found Elena Carter bent over the sink, sleeves rolled, scrubbing a pan until it shone. He had been wandering, too restless to sleep. The victory in history class still buzzed faintly, but the shadow of ridicule lingered. Something about Maya's certainty gnawed at him. Her conviction that clarity mattered, that seeing meant more than surviving school. He needed to understand what drove her. Elena? His voice was hesitant as he stepped inside. She turned, surprised but not startled. The lines of exhaustion on her face softened when she saw him. Logan, shouldn't you be asleep? Big day tomorrow? He shrugged, leaning against the doorframe. Couldn't. My head's loud. He hesitated. It's about Maya. Elena set down the pan, dried her hands on a dish towel, and motioned him toward the small wooden table tucked in the corner. She poured tea from a chipped kettle into mismatched mugs. Staff cups, far humbler than the crystal goblets upstairs. The steam curled upward, carrying the scent of chamomile. "You've been spending time with her?" Elena said gently. Logan nodded. "She's different. Smarter than anyone I've ever met. But it feels like she's carrying something, like she has a mission. I don't understand what it is." Elena folded the towel carefully, her hands trembling slightly. For a moment she seemed to wrestle with herself. Then she sighed, her voice low. "She does. And if you truly want to understand, you need to know about my brother." Logan leaned forward, pulse quickening. "Daniel Carter," she said. 2 years ago, he was a senior security engineer at Whitaker Technologies. Brilliant. Loyal. He built systems to keep threats out. But when the breach happened, her voice faltered. They blamed him. Logan frowned. The breach that cost millions? The one that almost tanked the stock price? Elena's eyes darkened. Yes. The internal investigation was rushed. CEM logs were misread, the timeline of intrusion pieced together poorly. In the end, they said Daniel's SSH key had been compromised. He was accused of negligence, fired in disgrace, his career destroyed. She clasped her hands tightly on the table. But Daniel wasn't guilty. I know my brother. He would never betray his work. Logan's throat went dry. Then why would my father accept that? Elena's voice sharpened. Because the report came from Victor Hale, the CFO. He presented it with confidence, with authority. And your father trusted him. Victor Hale, Connor's father. The one who had turned Logan into a meme. Elena lowered her gaze. We lost everything. Savings, home, dignity. We moved here only because Andrew let me keep this job. Perhaps he doubted the evidence, or perhaps he felt guilt. Either way, Maya grew up watching her uncle broken by a lie. She swore she would not forget. Logan sat back, stunned. Suddenly, Maya's intensity made sense, the way she spoke of clarity, the way she pushed him to see. It wasn't just philosophy to her. It was justice. She wants to prove Daniel innocent, he whispered. Elena looked up, eyes wet but steady. Yes. She believes truth can be seen if you look closely enough, but she's a child, and the people who buried Daniel's career are powerful. Victor Hale has every reason to keep the past hidden. Logan thought of Connor, smirking on the bus, wielding cruelty like a family inheritance. The image now burned darker. Not just a bully, but the son of a man who might have destroyed lives to protect himself. He rubbed his temples. Why are you telling me this? Because Maya trusts you, Elena said simply. And because I want to believe the Whitaker name can mean more than power. Maybe it can mean truth. Logan stared into his tea, the steam fogging his vision. For years he had thought of himself as a failure in his father's eyes. Now, sitting across from Elena, he realized his family's empire wasn't just disappointed in him. It might be complicit in injustice. He looked up, voice barely a whisper. I'll help her. Elena reached across the table, laying a hand over his. Then be careful. Men like Victor Hale don't tolerate questions. Power protects itself. The clock ticked softly on the wall. Outside, the rain had returned, lashing against the windows. Inside, Logan felt a new weight settle on his shoulders. Not humiliation, not grades. Something heavier, but strangely clearer. He rose slowly, the decision rooting in him like an oak seedling breaking soil. His failures at Northwood, the ridicule of the bus, even his father's disappointment, all of it seemed smaller compared to the truth he now carried. As he left the kitchen, Elena's voice followed, soft but resolute. Maya will lead you, if you let her. But remember, seeing comes with responsibility. Logan stepped into the hallway, shadows stretching long across the marble floor. For the first time, his life felt like more than a string of mistakes. It felt like a path, narrow but visible, waiting for him to follow. The offices of Whitaker Technologies at Harbor Point in Stamford looked different at night. By day, the 28th floor pulsed with analysts, engineers, and executives moving briskly across polished tile. By night, it was a cavern of silence, the glow of monitors the only reminder of the lifeblood of a billion-dollar enterprise. Logan entered with his father's spare badge, palms clammy as the sensor light flicked green. The card felt heavier than it should have. He wasn't just sneaking into an office. He was stepping into the marrow of the company that bore his name. Maya's words echoed in his mind. Justice requires clarity. He crossed to the archive suite, a long room lined with servers and metal filing cabinets. The hum of cooling fans filled the space. On one wall, a terminal screen pulsed with raw data, logs, timestamps, flags, details that looked meaningless unless you knew how to look. Logan sat down, heart pounding. He didn't have training in cybersecurity, but he had something new. The discipline Maya had drilled into him. Observation, signal versus noise, empathy. He steadied his breath and began. The SIEM dashboards, security information and event management, scrolled lines of code and entries. He saw timestamps, IP addresses, login attempts. To an untrained eye, it was a flood. He searched instead for rhythm. There. 2 entries side by side. 2:12 a.m., access from the CFO's workstation. 2:13 a.m., breach tagged to Daniel Carter's credentials. 1 minute apart, same subnet. Not coincidence. A bridge. Logan followed the trail into VPN logs, connections from a Delaware address. Transactions routed through a shell entity, disguised as vendor invoices, the corporate equivalent of shadows. He dug deeper. Git commit histories. Code changes from the breach window, signed with a reused key. The metadata pointed back not to Daniel, but to Victor Hale's device. Logan exhaled, his throat dry. Maya was right. The story doesn't match the surface. He copied everything into a folder, naming it Timeline Breach Forensics PDF. For once, school felt irrelevant. This was real. This was truth clawing its way out of noise. A click broke the silence. The door handle turned. Logan froze. Voices spilled in, low, tense. He ducked behind a cabinet, clutching the USB he had just saved. "The vendor's locked in," said one voice. Logan's stomach dropped. Connor. His tone carried smug confidence, echoing the arrogance from the bus. A deeper voice answered, hard as steel. Victor Hale. "Careful what you repeat. These walls don't forgive mistakes." Logan dared a glance. The CFO stood in the faint glow, tall and severe, his briefcase clasped like a weapon. Connor lingered behind him, eager but uneasy. "We buried that breach," Victor muttered. "Daniel Carter stays guilty. If Andrew starts sniffing, we remind him about market risk. Reputation before everything." Logan's pulse thundered in his ears. It was confirmation, not just negligence, but conspiracy. Connor tried to imitate his father's authority. "But what if someone digs deeper?" Victor turned sharply. "Then you learn the first rule of power. Control isn't about truth. It's about what people are too afraid to challenge. Remember that." Logan pressed himself flatter against the cabinet, the scent of metal and dust filling his lungs. If they saw him, if they found the USB in his pocket, his world would end before it began. At last, Victor snapped his briefcase shut. "Come, we're done here." Their footsteps faded, the door closing with a heavy click. Logan stayed frozen until the silence returned. Only then did he stumble out, legs shaking. He slipped into the stairwell, heart still racing, and leaned against the cold concrete wall. His shirt clung to him, damp with sweat. In his hand, the USB felt like a burning coal. The skyline glittered through the narrow stairwell window, the sound beyond it dark and endless. Logan understood. Whitaker Technologies wasn't a fortress of innovation. It was a labyrinth of secrets, and somewhere deep inside, Victor Hale had built his throne. Maya was waiting outside, standing beneath a street lamp in the near-empty lot. Her sketchbook was tucked under one arm, her hair damp from drizzle. She didn't ask how it went. She simply looked at him, as if she already knew. Logan held up the USB. His voice trembled. "It's all here. Victor, the payments, the reused keys, the logs." He framed Daniel. Maya closed her eyes briefly, as though confirming a truth she had carried all along. "Then you're ready for the next step." He laughed bitterly, adrenaline still burning. "Ready? I nearly got caught. If they had seen me—" "They didn't," Maya cut in gently. "Because you looked, you listened, you connected. That's what makes you dangerous to them." Logan stared at her, at the strange calm in her 11-year-old face. She wasn't afraid, not in the way he was. For her, fear had already been lived through. Rain pattered against the pavement as they began walking. The night smelled of salt and steel, of risk and possibility. Logan knew he couldn't unsee what he had discovered. The bridges were built, and they led only one way, toward truth. The 28th floor of Whitaker Technologies gleamed with steel and glass, the boardroom perched like a crown above Long Island Sound. Outside, storm clouds pressed low over the water. Inside, the atmosphere was heavier still. Around the mahogany table sat 20 men and women, their faces etched with unease. Andrew Whitaker stood at the head, shoulders rigid. This was not a scheduled meeting. It was an emergency session, called less than 24 hours after Logan had slipped into the company archives. The directors knew it. The attorneys knew it. And now, so did Victor Hale. The CFO entered late, tall, composed, his charcoal suit tailored to perfection. He set his briefcase down with deliberate calm and adjusted his cufflinks. His eyes flickered toward Andrew, then swept the room as if he still owned it. Andrew opened. "We are here to revisit the breach of 2 years ago. New information has come forward. Information this board must see." The murmurs began immediately. That incident had nearly cost Whitaker Tech its future. Investor trust shaken, regulators circling, lawsuits filed. No one wanted to revisit it. Victor's voice cut through, smooth and confident. "Before we proceed, I must remind this board that what we discuss is material non-public information. Under SEC Regulation FD, disclosure outside this room would be a violation. All present are bound by internal NDA." It was a shield of legal armor, wielded to intimidate. A few directors nodded, cowed. Andrew didn't flinch. "Confidentiality does not excuse negligence. It does not excuse betrayal." A rustle of unease rippled down the table. From the far side, a director raised his hand. "Mr. Whitaker, with respect, how reliable is this new evidence? Are we to gamble the company's reputation on speculation?" Andrew's gaze shifted toward the young man seated at his right, Logan. The room stiffened. A teenager at a board meeting was unheard of, but Andrew's expression was set. The evidence belongs to him. He will speak. Logan rose, folder in hand. His legs trembled, but his voice found strength. 2 years ago, Daniel Carter was blamed for the breach, but the logs tell a different story. He clicked the remote. Screens behind him lit up with charts and timelines. Look here, 2:12 a.m., a login from the CFO's workstation. 1 minute later, 2:13 a.m., the intrusion tagged to Daniel Carter's credentials, same subnet. Overlap, not accident. The board members leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Logan continued. VPN records route through a Delaware entity, transactions tied to shell accounts. And commit histories show reused cryptographic keys. Metadata points not to Daniel, but to Victor Hale's machine. He swallowed, pressing on. And here. He displayed a scanned form. Device handoff signed by Mr. Hale. Timestamped during the breach window. That's not speculation. That's evidence. For a long moment, the room was silent except for the faint hum of the air vents. Then Victor leaned back, lips curling in a practiced smile. This is absurd. A boy rummages through old files and suddenly claims forensic mastery. Logs are messy, metadata misleading. To suggest I orchestrated a breach is slanderous. His voice hardened. Do you understand the risk of entertaining this fantasy? Stock collapse, SEC intervention, shareholder lawsuits. You would destroy this company on the word of a teenager. Logan felt heat rise in his face. For a second, doubt clawed at him. Then Maya's words returned. Signal versus noise. See what others ignore. He steadied his voice. This isn't fantasy. It's a pattern. And patterns don't lie. One of the independent directors cleared his throat. If this evidence holds, it implies deliberate misconduct. At the very least, it warrants review. Another chimed in. The governance risk alone demands independent verification. Victor's composure cracked. He slammed his hand on the table. You will destroy everything. Do you think the market forgives weakness? If this leaks, Whitaker Technologies is finished. Andrew's voice cut clean through. What destroys a company isn't truth, it's concealment. And what restores it is accountability. The words seemed to settle like a gavel. One by one, the directors spoke. A special committee should be convened. An external audit firm retained. Control removed from anyone under suspicion. The vote came quickly, unanimous despite Victor's protests. Effective immediately, he was suspended, his access revoked. For the first time, Logan saw fear in Victor Hale's eyes, a fleeting crack in a mask that had always seemed unshakable. The meeting adjourned, the directors filing out into the storm-dark corridor. Andrew remained at the head of the table, his posture rigid, eyes still locked on Victor until the man left. Then Andrew turned to Logan. For once, no disappointment clouded his gaze, only something rarer, something Logan had longed for, respect. You did well, Andrew said quietly. Logan sank into his chair, adrenaline still coursing. He had spoken in the lion's den and survived. The truth, once buried, was alive again. Outside the boardroom, the storm broke across the sound, lightning splitting the horizon. Inside, the Whitaker empire trembled, but for the first time in years, it trembled toward truth. Greenwich Town Hall had seen its share of zoning disputes and ribbon cuttings, but never a scene like this. Cameras crowded the steps. Microphones bristled in the autumn air, and the lobby buzzed with the restless energy of reporters smelling blood. Whitaker Technologies was about to speak. Inside, the marble hall was transformed into a press room. Folding chairs lined the floor, a podium stood beneath the Whitaker banner, and flashes from the media strobed against high windows. Employees whispered in the back rows. Investors sat stiffly near the front. The Carter family occupied one corner, Elena with her hands folded tightly in her lap, Maya upright and unflinching, and beside them, Daniel Carter, his face etched with fatigue after 2 years of disgrace. The findings of the independent audit had been released only hours before. The conclusion was stark. Daniel Carter had been innocent. The breach was traced to deliberate manipulation of credentials, with VPN routing and cryptographic evidence pointing back to Victor Hale. What had once been suspicion was now fact, signed by one of the most respected firms in the industry. The room hushed as Andrew Whitaker walked to the podium. His suit was dark, but there was no armor in his posture, only gravity. He looked out at the crowd, at the cameras, at Daniel Carter, and finally at his son in the front row. Then he began. 2 years ago, Whitaker Technologies suffered a breach that threatened our company's survival. In the aftermath, we sought answers quickly. Too quickly. And in that haste, we placed blame on a man who did not deserve it. His voice carried without strain, but every syllable felt weighted. Daniel Carter was accused of negligence, stripped of his livelihood, and his name dragged through shadows. We relied on a report presented by our former CFO, and I, like this board, trusted it. That trust was misplaced. Gasps rippled. Reporters scribbled furiously. Andrew bowed his head slightly, then did what no one expected. He bent at the waist, deeply, publicly, a gesture foreign to boardrooms but unmistakable in its meaning. To Daniel Carter and to his family, I apologize. We failed you. I failed you. Today, we begin to make it right. A stunned silence fell. CEOs did not bow, yet Andrew did, and when he straightened, his eyes glistened with something long absent, humility. He continued, voice steady. Mr. Carter will be reinstated as Director of Security Engineering, effective immediately. He will lead our remediation program and implement stronger standards, SOC 2 controls, ISO 27001 protocols, to ensure this failure never repeats. In addition, a settlement agreement has been reached to provide restitution for the damages unjustly inflicted on his family. The applause began hesitantly, then grew. Engineers who had once worked under Daniel clapped first, then employees, then even some shareholders who knew integrity was the only currency left to spend. Daniel rose slowly. For a moment, he seemed uncertain whether to approach the podium. Then, with Maya urging him forward, he stepped up beside Andrew. His voice was hoarse but clear. For 2 years, I carried a mark I did not deserve. I watched my niece grow up under whispers. My sister struggled to keep us afloat. Tonight, that mark is lifted, not by silence, but by truth. I thank those who saw what others ignored, especially those young enough to remind us that clarity is not age-bound. His eyes found Logan, and something like a smile ghosted across his face. The cameras flashed wildly. For the press, it was redemption, scandal, and legacy all in one. For Logan, it was something else. Watching his father bow to Daniel Carter and admit failure felt like watching marble crack to reveal human flesh. Andrew returned to the microphone for questions. A journalist from the Times called out, "Will Whitaker Technologies pursue clawbacks against Victor Hale?" "Yes," Andrew said firmly. "Clawback policies will be applied. Compensation gained through misconduct will be returned. And we have already informed the SEC. Governance is not about avoiding storms, it's about facing them openly." Another reporter shouted, "What about reputation risk?" Andrew didn't hesitate. Reputation is built not on never erring, but on correcting mistakes. Whitaker Technologies will not be remembered for burying truth. We will be remembered for confronting it. The words carried weight, but the moment that mattered most was quieter. As Andrew stepped away from the podium, he paused beside his son. He placed a hand on Logan's shoulder, firm but trembling. "I'm proud of you," he said, voice low enough that only Logan could hear. For a second, Logan thought he'd misheard. All his life, approval had been rationed, conditional, hidden behind marble walls. Now it was spoken aloud, raw, and unpolished. Logan swallowed hard. Thanks, Dad. The cameras, relentless, caught it anyway. The billionaire father, once cold and distant, and the son who had become the unlikely torchbearer of truth. Outside, rain had cleared, leaving the steps of Town Hall slick with light. The crowd spilled out, buzzing with headlines. Whitaker apologizes. Carter vindicated. CFO suspended pending charges. But for Logan, the only headline that mattered was the one unwritten. The first moment his father had seen him not as a liability, but as a son. The marble atrium of the Yale Center for British Art gleamed with afternoon light. Its usual audience of hushed visitors studying Turner landscapes and Constable skies had been replaced by rows of chairs, a podium draped in navy fabric, and a banner in bold letters. The Whitaker Carter Fellowship, Institute for Ways of Seeing. What began as scandal had turned into reform. Victor Hale was gone, stripped of his role, his reputation unraveling under regulatory inquiry, and Daniel Carter had returned to Whitaker Technologies, not as a survivor but as a leader, steering the company toward resilience with new protocols and a hardened security culture. Investors had steadied, but today wasn't about markets. Today was about vision. Backstage, Logan adjusted the cuffs of his blazer. The boy once mocked as Prince on a bus now stood at the threshold of something larger. He could feel the energy of the room pressing against the curtain. Journalists, Yale faculty, local educators, and students from schools across Fairfield County, many of them from districts that never expected invitations to halls like this. Andrew appeared beside him, dressed plainly, his suit free of the pinstripes that once signaled authority. "Nervous?" he asked. "Terrified," Logan admitted. Andrew's mouth lifted at the corner. "Good. Fear means you care about what happens next." The hum of conversation dimmed as Andrew stepped onto the stage. His voice, once clipped with corporate polish, now carried something quieter: humility. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. Out of failure, we found clarity. Out of humiliation, courage. Out of injustice, truth. From these lessons, we create something new. The Whitaker Carter Fellowship will bring young people from across our community to study not only knowledge but perception, attention, pattern recognition, empathy, logic. We call it the Institute for Ways of Seeing, because before we can solve the world's problems, we must first learn how to see them clearly." Applause filled the atrium. Andrew gestured to the side. "But this institute is not my story. It belongs to my son, Logan, and to the girl who showed him what it means to look beyond the surface." Logan's pulse hammered as he walked to the podium. Lights caught his face, cameras flashing. For a heartbeat, he remembered the bus ride, the memes, the shame. Then he remembered the spider web in the oak tree, the sound of onions and garlic in the pan, the photograph of his father in a garage with wires strewn across the floor. He gripped the microphone. "My name is Logan Whitaker. For most of my life, I thought being seen meant being watched, by classmates, by reporters, by my father. But seeing isn't about attention. It's about connection. Maya Carter taught me that." He paused, eyes moving across the crowd. Teachers leaned forward. Students watched intently. Journalists scribbled. "School taught me facts, but I never understood how they fit. I failed because I didn't see bridges, between history and science, between numbers and people, between effort and empathy. Maya showed me that meaning comes from connecting what seems separate. That skill saved me, and it can save others." A murmur of approval swept the audience. Logan continued, steadier now. "This fellowship will bring students from schools in Bridgeport, Bay, Stamford, and beyond, kids who might never walk Yale's halls, and give them tools that don't just raise grades but open eyes, mind maps, attention training, evidence-based practices, but most importantly, empathy. If we can teach people to see each other, we can change not only schools, but society. The applause rose louder. Logan exhaled, a weight leaving him. For once, he wasn't proving himself to silence or to spite. He was offering something larger. He turned, gesturing. But the person who should have the final word is our first fellow, Maya Carter. The room gasped softly. An 11-year-old? A maid's daughter? Maya walked steadily to the podium, her sketchbook in hand. She barely reached the microphone, but when she spoke, the room bent toward her. My uncle was blamed for something he didn't do. My mother worked so I could read, and I learned that power can blind people. But blindness can be cured, not with money, but with learning how to see. That's why this institute matters. Her small hands tightened on the sketchbook. If we can teach children, rich or poor, powerful or forgotten, to look with honesty, then maybe they won't break what they don't understand. Maybe they'll start fixing what they've ignored. That's how you change the world. Not with force, with vision. The audience rose to its feet, applause shaking the marble walls. Elena wept silently in her chair. Daniel rested a hand over hers, pride softening the lines of his face. Andrew's eyes glistened, and Logan felt his chest swell, not with shame, but with belonging. When the applause finally eased, Logan and Maya stepped off the stage together. Sunlight filtered through tall windows, painting the atrium gold. For Logan, the journey from a boy mocked on a bus to a voice on this stage felt impossible, and yet it had happened. For Maya, it was proof that even those smallest in stature could build legacies tall enough to reach generations. They stood side by side, looking out toward the courtyard where banners fluttered in the breeze. Neither spoke. They didn't need to. The Institute for Ways of Seeing had opened, not as a monument to wealth, but as a seed of vision. And in that moment, Logan and Maya both knew, once people truly learned how to see, nothing would remain the same. Thank you for staying with us until the very end of this story. If this journey of truth, redemption, and vision touched your heart, we invite you to subscribe so you can join us for more stories that heal, inspire, and remind us of the power we all have to see differently.